Good evening from Jakarta and good morning from those turning in from the United States East Coast. Welcome to the opening session and also the first session of the Climate Heroes Dialogue Series. This program is brought to you by Foreign Policy Community of Indonesia, which is the largest foreign policy group in Indonesia and also in Southeast Asia, and in cooperation with also the support of the United States Embassy in Jakarta and the U.S. Department of State. My name is Esther and I'll be your MC for today. Before we move further to the discussion today, I'd like to introduce a little bit about what the Climate Hero series is all about. Each month through this program, FPCI is working with the US Embassy to bring a pair of climate heroes from the United States and Indonesia in a virtual dialogue with the Indonesian public on a topic relevant to climate change and addressing the climate crisis. These heroes that we invited are prominent figures in policy, academia, think tank, NGO, businesses, and the government who are leading the fight against climate change and taking steps in transforming their community for a climate resilient future. Today, I am pleased to welcome more than 2,000 participants from across Indonesia who are joining us right now from the Zoom and also from several YouTube live streams currently ongoing. I was told that we are not only joined from by attendees from Indonesia or the United States, but also from 31 countries: Myanmar, Kuwait, Fiji, even Turkey. So welcome to everybody. Truly a pleasure for FPCA to host all of your global audience here tonight in Jakarta time. On behalf of FPCI, we would like to thank you, our university partners who have made this dialogue possible. Universitas Bosowa, Universitas Slamet Riyadi, Universitas Syarif Hidayatullah Jakarta, Universitas 17 Agustus 1945, Universitas Gajah Mada, Universitas Sultan Ageng Tirtayasa, Universitas Jenderal Ahmad Yani, Universitas Sunan Ampel, President University, Universitas Kristen Maranatha. I also want to greet other students who are attending from Universitas Sumatera Utara, Universitas Samratulangi, Universitas Hasanuddin, Universitas Pajajaran, Universitas Nasional Jakarta, dan Universitas Erlangga. We are also joined today by FPCI university chapters from across the country. FPCI chapters are an extension of FPCI's work on the university level, run amazingly and wholly completely by university students in their respective campuses. So I'd like to greet them as part of our family. And thank you for all your support in making this Climate Heroes dialogue today possible. We also want to thank our community partners. First and foremost, we have IMPLI, or the Ikatan Mahasiswa Teknik Lingkungan Indonesia, or the Indonesian Student Association of Environmental Engineers, who comes from 44 universities across 6 regions in the country. We also want to thank We the Genesis, Sustain the Nation, BEM Unpad, BEM UI, Green Welfare, and Purna Paskibraka Indonesia. Thank you also to our media partners for supporting this event, as well as our press friends and journalists who are attending today from both the national press and international press. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. Before I introduce our climate heroes in this session further, I would like to welcome His Excellency Sung Kim, the United States Ambassador to Indonesia, to give his remarks to open the Climate Heroes Dialogue. But firstly, I would like to notify all attendees joining from the Zoom and also the YouTube live streams that we have interpretation available. So if you would like to listen to the interpreted language, Bahasa Indonesia, make sure to click the interpretation at the bottom right of your screen and then click Indonesia and mute the original audio. Bagi para peserta yang ingin mendengarkan diskusi dalam bahasa Indonesia, dapat memilih interpretasi bahasa di layar kanan bawah, pilih bahasa Indonesia dan mute original audio. Peserta yang di YouTube, kami juga memberikan 2 YouTube link. Link yang pertama untuk audio dalam bahasa Indonesia dan link yang kedua untuk siaran dalam bahasa Inggris. So without further ado, I would like to welcome His Excellency Sung Kim. I was told that His Excellency can only stay with us for a brief moment, so he'll be joining from the Climate Hero studio. Over to you, Mr. Ambassador.
Salamat malam, and thank you for this opportunity to kick off the new Climate Heroes program. I would first like to thank Ambassador Dino Jalar and the Foreign Policy Community of Indonesia for developing a new platform where Indonesian and American leaders in the fight against climate change can share ideas, actions, and solutions. The U.S. mission to Indonesia is proud to support this initiative. We look forward to hearing from our heroes in the coming months. I would also like to thank Governor Anies Baswedan and Pak Ani Dasgupta for joining us tonight and for their leadership and their commitment to finding a solution to the climate emergency. As the recent Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report makes clear, climate change is already a crisis. It is the greatest existential threat facing our world today. The Biden administration is committed to meeting this crisis and has announced bold policies to implement that commitment. These policies aim to modernize our cities with climate-resilient infrastructure and build clean energy future that creates millions of new jobs. As President Biden said at the Major Economies Forum less than 2 weeks ago, we have to act now. Time is running out. The United States, however, cannot do this alone. We all must increase our climate ambition and commit both to accelerate the deployment of clean energy and to make larger reductions in our greenhouse gas emissions in this decade. Combating the global climate crisis requires ambitious global and national commitments driving strong action in this decisive decade. The world needs to cut emissions by at least 45% by 2030 in order to be on a credible path to net zero by 2050 and keep global temperatures within reach of the Paris Agreement targets of less than 1.5 degrees Celsius. Reaching these goals will also help reduce the destabilizing impacts of climate-induced migration, displacement, and conflict. They will also mitigate the sea level rise that is threatening cities around the world like Jakarta. Here in Indonesia, the US Embassy has been intensely engaged with the government of Indonesia on raising our collective climate ambitions. We are committed to our bilateral US-Indonesia climate dialogue in the form of a high-level interministerial climate working group and 4 task forces which are organized around key climate change issues of emission reductions and longer-term net zero goals, natural ecosystems and land use, renewable energy, and green financing. Our close partnership with the bilateral climate working group and task forces is a key element of building trust and rapport with our partners in the Indonesian government. And so far, we have seen positive forward movement. I would be remiss if I did not mention here some of the significant progress Indonesia has already made, especially in the forestry and land use sectors, to curb and halt deforestation, a major contributor to greenhouse gas emissions to the lowest level in 20 years. Indonesia has also recently announced at the Major Economies Forum held September 17th that it plans to participate in the US-EU-backed Global Methane Pledge to take steps to reduce methane gas emissions. Methane gas contributes roughly 13% to Indonesia's total greenhouse gas emissions, and Indonesia's commitment to the Global Methane Pledge is further demonstration of its commitment to become a global climate leader. The United States and the US Embassy stand ready to partner with Indonesia in this noble endeavor. Certainly, there will be much more for us to do, but we're going to get through this climate crisis together. Thank you to our 2 climate heroes speaking tonight, and to the heroes who will share their experiences in the coming months. Their work is inspiring and provides a glimmer of hope in our shared resolve to preserve this magnificent planet.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador, for sharing some to this opening session of the Climate Heroes Dialogue, and also setting the context of Indonesia-United States bilateral relations and cooperation for climate crisis. Now it is my pleasure to welcome our first climate hero from Indonesia. It is no other than Bapak Anies Rashid Baswedan, PhD, Gubernur DKI Jakarta. Governor of Jakarta, Anies Baswedan, as our Indonesian climate hero. Anies Baswedan is an Indonesian academic, activist, and politician who currently serves as the governor of Indonesia's capital, Jakarta. He was appointed as the Minister of Culture and Primary and Secondary Education from 2014 until 2016, before winning the election at his current office in 2017. Governor Baswedan has announced Jakarta's target to curb greenhouse gas emissions by 30% by 2030, along with climate initiatives such as the Jakarta Urban Regeneration Program, which was built to address Jakarta's sinking problem in environmental malpractices. Under his leadership, the region is targeting at least 50% of all city buses in Jakarta to be electric by 2025. More recently, the governor has also committed to improving Jakarta's air quality. Welcome, Mr. Governor. We're pleased to have you here today.
Thank you, Esther. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good evening, everyone in Jakarta, and good morning to our friends, especially in the East Coast in the US. Excellencies, Mr. Sang Yung Kim, U.S. Ambassador to the Republic of Indonesia, Mr. Ani Dasgupta, President and CEO of World Resource Institute, and Dr. Dino Patijalal, our good friend, the founder of Foreign Policy Community of Indonesia. First of all, allow me to express my appreciations for the opportunity to share some thought in this very important sessions, the virtual forum of climate heroes. And there are, if I may jump into the issues that we are about to discuss, there are 4 things that I'd like to point out in this opening remark. 1, the world is indeed urbanizing, and the world populations mostly lives in the cities. And if you look at data in 2018, it's about 55% of the population in the cities. And this year, 2021, we have 56%. And it is projected that at least 60% of world populations will live in cities by 2030. And even in 2050, it is projected that 68% of the world population will be in the city. So we may have different numbers, but the trend is clear. The world is urbanizing, and the role of cities is more and more important to our civilization. So that's point number 1. Number 2, the roles of urban system and city leadership become extremely important like never before. Along with the fact that the world is urbanizing, urban systems and city leadership hold a crucial role, especially when cities were challenged with major forces, such as what we have been experiencing in the past year and a half, the COVID-19 pandemic and the climate change. So indeed, we all are currently under pressures due to the pandemic, but we shall not forget that the greatest challenge for all of us for this century, which is climate change. So that's point number 2, that city leaderships and urban system becoming more important. Point number 3 is the importance of cities in the global discourse. It is astonishing to see how the international community places significant attention on cities. In global agreement, such as the Paris Agreement and the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, city government are recognized as important allies in driving to a more green, resilient, and sustainable futures. So cities are also being responsible to reduce global carbon emissions by doing actions at the local level. In fact, we have G20, and then starting in 2019, we have Urban 20, which is urban level of leadership under the umbrella of G20, which shows that the global discourse now pay more attention to cities. Now, point number 4, we are experiencing a challenge. Cities are changing. Cities have dynamic of life, and during the inaugurations of the Urban 20 leadership last month, I highlighted 6 phenomenon in a post-pandemic setting that we all must aware of. And I'd like to share here on the challenges that we have to anticipate, especially for cities across the globe after this pandemic. 1, we will be facing the need for housing that is productive. We used to see productivity taking place in the office, in a working place outside our home. During the pandemic, we have been seeing a phenomenon of work from home, and therefore having productive housing that is affordable is an issue that we will need to address in the very near futures. Number 2 is the future of property industry itself. yes, we are urbanizing. We live in the urban area. More people live in the urban area. However, the way we are operating as our business activities is transforming. So in the past, we have towers for office facilities. Now, with the experience of work from home, we are seeing a transformation. So the future of property industry is an issue that we will need to address. Number 3 is about sustainable mobility and inclusive accessibility to mobility. And what I mean here is that we will need a setting that provides mobility that is sustainable over time. And point number 5 that I'd like to share here is about the future of work. We are seeing transformations of jobs available, and we are seeing new jobs, new type of jobs created post-pandemic. And then we are seeing also a sad phenomenon, but we need to address, is that rising numbers of orphans, especially in the cities that is heavily affected by the pandemic. Now, the last point I'd like to share here, which is something that we need to address, is that during the pandemic, we have seen reductions of social interactions due to the fact that we have to quarantine ourselves, we have to adopt social restrictions. So we are seeing deprived of social interactions. This is another issue that we'll have to address. So with those 4 points, I think climate change is still our biggest challenge. However, when we address that, we need to address it in a setting of post-pandemic phenomenon. So I'm sharing with you the 6 phenomenon, and hopefully it can be a material that we can discuss further. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor Anies. And next, I want to introduce the President and CEO of World Resource Institute, where he will respond to the 6 points raised by Anies. You will have your 4 or 5 minutes, but let me just introduce you first to our audience. Ani is, and by the way, Ani is not a brother of Governor Anies. Yeah, they're totally different people, different mothers and different fathers, right? Although they look sort of alike. Ani is a recognized leader in the world on sustainable cities, urban design, and poverty alleviation. He was the famous global director of WRI Ross Center for Sustainable Cities since 2014, and he has launched many initiatives, including the New Urban Mobility Alliance and the Coalition for Urban Transitions. He also developed his skills over, I think, the last 21 years, and he had positions in the World Bank, and he was the first to develop the bank's first knowledge strategy during his service as director for knowledge and learning. And he also worked back in Jakarta, so he's actually practically Indonesian. And he was deeply engaged in a post-tsunami reconstruction in Aceh. But Ani, before I give your time to respond, we actually overlooked displaying a video that would provide context to our discussions. So I was wondering if I can beg for your indulgence to show this video from Indonesian celebrities with a total following of 50 million people on the importance of climate change. So let me show that first, and then Ani will have your remarks here. Please show the video.
Halo, saya Mika Tambayong.
Saya Krisdayanti.
Saya Kalista Iskandar.
Saya Reza Radian.
Saya Chico Jericho.
Saya Chelsea Islan.
Saya Cinta Laura Kiel.
Saya Dian Sastrowardoyo.
Saya Wulan Guritno.
Saya Julia Stel.
Saya Yoshi Sudarso.
Saya sangat semangat menyongsong Indonesia Emas
100 tahunnya merdeka pada tahun
2045 nanti.
Kita semua di Indonesia bermimpi dan menginginkan agar bisa mencapai tujuan Indonesia Emas di tahun 2045.
Sungguh suatu capaian sejarah yang indah
dan luar biasa dalam perjalanan bangsa kita.
Nggak kebayang betapa hebatnya Indonesia Emas nanti.
Insya Allah pada tahun 2045 saya akan mulai mewariskan Indonesia kepada putra-putri saya.
Di usia NKRI yang 100 tahunan,
saya ingin kita semua hidup dalam Indonesia yang Pancasilais,
yang modern,
maju,
makmur,
sejahtera,
hijau, adil, aman, bebas korupsi,
demokratis,
dan tentunya bersatu.
Tujuan tersebut bukan tanpa tantangan.
Ancaman terbesar di tahun 2045 adalah pandemi.
Bukan lagi kemiskinan atau kebodohan.
bukan separatisme,
bukan perang nuklir,
bukan invasi militer dari luar.
Ancaman terbesar bangsa Indonesia
Di tahun 2045 nanti,
the mother of all problems adalah
Pemanasan global.
di mana suhu bumi rata-rata akan naik.
3-4 derajat Celcius.
Itu adalah suhu terpanas sepanjang sejarah manusia. Suhu terpanas di bumi kita yang sudah berusia 4,5 miliar tahun.
Suhu tinggi akan membuat planet bumi sakit parah.
saya tidak mau melihat Indonesia Emas dan anak-anak kita nanti
Hidup sengsara dalam bumi yang panas ini.
Dengan perubahan cuaca yang ekstrim di mana-mana,
polusi merajalela dan membunuh puluhan juta orang.
hujan deras dan banjir di mana-mana.
Gunung es di Antartika terus mencair.
air laut akan naik setinggi 1 meter.
Sumber air dunia akan berkurang dengan sangat drastis.
Banyak pulau yang akan tenggelam.
Semakin banyak spesies punah yang disebut the sixth extinction.
Keragaman hayati akan rusak, suhu air laut yang naik, ekosistem laut yang terancam, serta terumbu karang yang banyak mati.
Penyakit semakin banyak menyebar, termasuk malaria.
Stok pangan menurun banyak dan kekeringan di mana-mana.
Banyak tanah yang akan menjadi padang pasir tandus.
dan konflik berbasis lingkungan yang meningkat juga secara drastis.
Semua ini akibat ulah manusia.
Namun, malapetaka ini dapat juga dicegah oleh manusia.
Karena itulah, ayo kita selamatkan Indonesia dari bumi panas.
Mari kita mulai mengurangi emisi gas rumah kaca Indonesia.
Ayo kita kurangi emisi gas rumah kaca 50% di tahun 2030.
Dan kita kurangi terus sampai akhirnya kita bisa mencapai 0 emisi di tahun 2050.
Ayo hijaukan ekonomi kita, jaga hutan kita.
Jaga ekosistem laut kita.
Kembangkan energi bersih dan kurangi segala emisi karbon dalam kehidupan kita.
Sehingga Indonesia Emas 2045 akan hidup dalam bumi yang nyaman, sehat, dan bahagia.
Sehingga Indonesia dapat menjadi bagian penting dalam solusi global perubahan iklim.
Planet bumi harus kita sembuhkan dari sekarang.
Target besar dan mulia ini bisa kita capai.
Ayo kita bergotong royong.
Selamatkan planet bumi.
Selamatkan umat manusia.
Selamatkan generasi kita dan generasi seterusnya.
Kita sambut Indonesia Emas yang penuh harapan.
Selamatkan Indonesia
2045.
Sadarkah Anda, kita mungkin adalah generasi terakhir yang bisa hidup dalam bumi yang bercuaca normal. Kita juga adalah satu-satunya generasi yang bisa menyelamatkan umat manusia dari bahaya bumi mendidih yang menanti kita selamanya di depan. Ayo kita penuhi panggilan planet bumi, panggilan umat manusia, dan panggilan sejarah. Ayo sebarkan pesan ini dan tanda tangani petisi. Thank you. As you see, everyone in that video, except the last guy, was very good looking and beautiful. So Ani, your response to Governor Anies Baswedan.
First of all, thank you very much for including me in this. It's an absolute pleasure to be with you, with the governor, you, but most importantly, all the people I see on my screen. I can't tell you what a wonderful pleasure it is to see so many younger people here, because without you, as you saw in the video, nothing's going to happen. So you are very much needed, and I hope The governor and I can give you some ideas how, but you are very much needed, whatever needs to happen next. So I'm thrilled to be here. I thank Dino for including me. As you heard from Dino, I lived in Jakarta for 5 years. I used to work for the World Bank, and I worked in Aceh for 2 years. Professionally, I'm not making this up. Those were my best years. I absolutely enjoyed working in Indonesia. It's a beautiful country with immense promise and fantastic food. So I was telling governor to invite me very soon so we can taste the food soon. To respond to the governor, first of all, I wish we had so many super articulate governors like this across the world who are running important cities. Governor Anis, it'll be good to clone you, and so you can be there. The reason I say this, I mean, I want to respond to everything Governor said, but I want to respond to 4 things Governor said that are critical. Why cities? Why are we worried about cities and climate? Simply because most people in the world live in cities. 70% of people live in cities. So that's one thing. So cities have to work. Cities have to be healthy places. Cities have to be good places to live, raise children, breathe clean air, have clean drinking water. So cities have to provide basic services, most people's quality of life. That's simple, right? So if we want to be a prosperous society, we want to be a society where people are thriving, we have to have cities that actually provide basic services, the highest quality. It's critical that cities work. Other side of this is cities also center of economic activity. 70% or more of world's GDP comes from activities in and around cities. So those activities produce 70+% of global GHG emission. So if cities are not different, or cities don't actually figure out how to do things differently, there is no chance, there's none, the science says no chance of solving the climate problem. You can't solve the climate problem in theory. You actually have to make sure cities are different, and different in a way it produces less carbon. But as I pointed out, it also has to provide good services to people who live there. So it has to do 2 things. Added to that, cities is a place. Why do so many people live in cities? Because people live in cities because cities provide 3 things: innovation, productivity, jobs. Most people come to cities from other areas because of jobs to make their families better. It provides culture, it provides education, it provides all these things together. This is why cities were invented about 10,000 years ago. There were no cities before 10,000 years ago. And since then, more and more people, because as society is growing, those things are very important. Job, productivity, innovation, culture, these are things what makes us a civilization. So that's why cities will continue to grow. So question is, third thing cities need to do is to provide jobs. So now, as Governor Anis said, COVID has been a terrific eye-opener, a horrible, sad chapter of our history, but a terrific eye-opener about how unequal the impacts of COVID was across the world. I'm sure everywhere you live. Though it was a global phenomenon, it started one place, went all over the world. However, poor people got impacted the worst, meaning poor people that got the most disease and died, more poor people died, and more poor people lost jobs. It shows us how unequal our cities. I'm sure Governor will agree with me. The inequality of our cities actually hinders progress. So if you think about the 4 things I said, decarbonization, creating jobs, quality of life of people, and equality, cities actually have to do all these things at the same time. And the challenge for us going forward is not one thing. We don't have time to solve carbon first, make cities equal next, create jobs after that, and then figure out how to call it. We, governors like Anis, have to do all these 4 things at the same time. And at the same time, cities across the world do not have the resources, as much resources they would want to do that. So they have to make very clever decisions about how to attack these things at the same time. How do you do one thing that allows you to get all the 4 results? That is what future of city management is. And that is where I want to add what Governor was saying. What we need in cities, there are 5,000 cities in the world that are more than 100,000 people. So we don't need to change one city, Jakarta. We need to change 5,000 cities. So now the question is, how do we get to 5,000 city change? We need transformational change in cities. We're not building cities that are going to do all these things. We need very different cities that are cleaner. People don't use cars, they use public transport, as Jakarta is trying to do, that people have housing. There's 1 billion people out of 3.5 billion people in the world who live in slums or slum-like conditions in the world. And you must have, all of you, seen it. We have to figure out how does that change? How do we make cities more equal? So transformational change is needed for cities, and there are ways to do it. A lot of cities in Jakarta is doing it. There are other cities doing it, and I can share many examples for you. But the most important thing is we have to move from marginal shifts to actual transformational shift, and that does require not just city government. It requires city government, businesses, and civic society to work together. This is where you come in. Cities don't change on its own. Cities don't change by the government. Everyone has to be part of how cities change. The last thing I want to say, Governor, I'm very pleased you raised the question of the city's role in the global discussion. And U20 that was just announced, cities were not part of global role even 5 years back. In Paris, in the COP in Paris, when all the governments came together to discuss climate, there was a real shift, recognition how important cities are for solving global problems. Before that, people assumed, correctly maybe, that national governments solve global problems, like war, nuclear agreements. Environmental questions became proper to the national government just after Rio, 40 years back. But cities were never part of it. This is a real positive shift in global discussions about the importance of cities that has taken place, the governor mentioned, and I'm very, very glad for it. With other city leaders, it is very difficult to think about how we will get to that. Last thing I want to say, Governor, you didn't mention, but because you're too humble, but cities also are a fountain of innovation. Across the world, we see cities inventing, trusting, doing new things to see how to solve these problems. And our job as a nonprofit, a global nonprofit, is to learn from that and share that knowledge across. And cities actually learn best from each other. And I'm very encouraged, actually, what's happening across the world. I'm happy to talk about that. So, Dino, I didn't respond to everything Governor said, but it's impossible to respond to such a comprehensive thing Governor laid out.
Thank you, Annie, for those very insightful comments. Let me go back to Governor Anies Baswedan. Governor, first, congratulations on your success in really pushing down COVID daily rates. I think it's the best in the world, or one of the best in the world. And on behalf of Jakarta families, thank you very much for your achievement and your hard work. Last year was all about COVID. This year is still about COVID, but this is a big year for climate change, right? Especially in the run-up to COP26 in Glasgow. I just want to get your take on how does Jakarta, as one of the largest cities in Southeast Asia and in Asia, position itself on climate change issues? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Thanks, Dino. But I'd like also to respond a little bit what Annie said earlier. I think very important point that cities across the globe are home for innovations, and we're learning from one another. I think leaderships of cities across the globe are facing challenges and very creative in coming up with breakthroughs that are source of knowledge for others, to learn and to do adaptation. So that's very important point. Now, coming back to your questions, Dino, with regard to Jakarta's position against this backdrop of climate change. I mean, we all know that climate change is caused by human activities that have been done for a long period of time. But our responsibility today is for our own produced emissions, for example. And Jakarta, with the greater area of Jakarta, we have around 30 million people. And we are responsible for actions to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions and to sort of increase our residents' ability to adapt to the changing environment. So what Jakarta has done in this climate mitigations adaptations is since 2012, we have produced a platform of activities for the climate, for the greenhouse gases emissions reduction program. Our target was to reach reductions of 30% by 2030. And I'm happy to report that we are 9 years from 2030, and we already reached 26% of the target. So 26 out of 30, that was our target. And number two, that I like to also mention, we just realized that Jakarta is the first local government here in Indonesia that treats climate change as, quote, crisis, and that it needs urgent action. It needs real attention from all stakeholders. And in fact, climate crisis has been incorporated into our regional strategic activities, which means climate actions have been mainstream into the city development process and secured the budget for that. So, aligned with what the UN Secretary General Guterres mentioned in the UN General Assembly recently, that the alarm of our climate change is now ringing at the fever pitch. So we are responding in every way to that.
Okay. I want to ask you a follow-up question to that, and I want Ani to respond to this question as well. I'm watching all the elections in Indonesia, in local governments, and climate does not seem to be an issue, right? Which means leaders, it's optional if they want to pay attention to it, because he or she was not elected on a climate agenda, right? And meanwhile, climate issue is the mother of all problems, as we saw in the video, because it affects industries, agriculture, urban development, and everything. Yeah. So, what is your take on that? Yeah. How can leaders, such as yourself, you've been very progressive, change this political culture so that a climate issue can be on top of the nation's political agenda?
Yeah, well, I think this is also another silver lining of the pandemic, that in the past year and a half, and if you come to visit Jakarta, you may experience a different view, that we had blue skies for months, weeks, and now we're often seeing pictures of beautiful blue skies of Jakartas. So when we talk about clean air here in the cities, it is no longer about pictures in a faraway land. We experience it during the pandemic. The question is now, can we have it every day in the next few months, in the next few years? So I think, we had the experience of having a better air quality. And then it's now becoming a new experience for our populations. And we do hope that become something of importance to the electorate. And number two is the new generations. Like my sons, he's in the elementary schools, and his posters in his room is, "I'm an ocean saver." And he and his classmates works on project saving the oceans from plastic residual. So I think this is not only experience of a unique case, but we are seeing new generations in Indonesia, especially here in Jakarta. So I think it's only about it's a matter of time, that we will be seeing that the issue of environment, sustainable development, becoming major issue, especially in a city as complex and have major pollution issues like Jakarta.
Ani, how do we get those 5,000 cities around the world to scale up on climate agenda when not many have climate as a political or elections issue?
Dino, it's a very, very good question. And the good news is there are more city and leaders have progressive climate action plans than compared to countries. So it is actually, cities are often more progressive than even their own countries. But I want to build on what our governor said. So about this point about your blue skies in Jakarta. This is absolutely true. I come from India. In the northern part of India, people saw Himalayas, beautiful Himalayas, 250 miles away for the first time. Like they've never known that in their generation, their grandparents used to talk about it, that they could see the mountains from their city. It's an eye-opener. Why is this important? It is important because to make actually show that if we did have cleaner air, if we did have better policies, that the actual outcome would be much better for all of us. It'll be our kids will breathe cleaner air, we will breathe cleaner air, we will get to work easily, we'll have playgrounds to play with. So I think, the answer to your question is twofold. How does it? So I think about this a lot because I live in the United States, in Washington right now. And the government in the United States right now, that a lot of you might know, the Biden administration is one of the most climate, they call it the climate president, the first climate, the most progressive administration you could imagine that is there. Yet, it's literally one vote away, maybe 1.5 vote away from not actually passing the climate legislation. That's what's going on this week. If you open CNN or any of those things, that is what's happening in Washington this week. So even the most progressive government is actually very fragile in actually moving this. So what needs to happen? I think two things need to happen, Dino. One is governors like Anis needs to not only have good policy, which already he has, but show that when you implement this policy, it is actually better for you. It's better for people, better for business, better for our kids. That outcome, Dino, is still, we talk about climate as a crisis. People think this is a pain. It's a sacrifice we have to do to get to better climate policy. But if we can show, which I'm sure Jakarta will show, that if you did good climate policy, it may be a temporal sacrifice, but the outcome is actually better for everyone. That outcome needs to happen on the ground. So we as WRI will be absolutely focused in help supporting governments like and countries and business across the world to move from commitment to outcomes, because we need people to see the outcome and vote for people who will push for better climate policy. Without political leadership, I think the science is clear, right? There's no question anymore of this. What is the issue? Who did it? Is it by humans or not? I don't think maybe there are some people in caves who don't believe it, but I think most people in the world know what the science is. So the question is not what to do, but how to do it, and how to get it done with the right policy and right resources. So one thing needs to happen is outcome on the ground that is good. The second thing needs to happen is what you're doing. I think we need young people, we need voters to get involved in this and actually start voting for people with the right policy. Without that political shift, you and I can be talking in the margins all the time, but people who control resources, which is city leaders, government, central government, and businesses. I just want to say business is important too. That, to me, that thing needs to happen. And I feel that is the next shift to us helping to elect leaders, all of us, that actually is supportive of transformative climate policy.
Thank you. Thank you. Now let me turn to Governor Anis. Governor, there was a lawsuit against the city of Jakarta by people who were complaining about air pollution, right? And the lawsuit was approved by the court, yeah. And so they won it. It was interesting how you responded. Other leaders would reject the what do you call it, the verdict, and say, no, we're good. But you responded the other way, saying, hey, they're right, and we have to do better, and we have to clean up the air. So it's a very interesting approach. Tell us why you took that approach, not rejecting, but actually embracing. And what do you intend to do to clean up Jakarta's air?
Yeah, well, the pollution issues, the air pollution issue in Jakarta is not a problem that existed only in the past 2-3 years. It's been there, we know it, we need to do something about it. And in fact, we had started in 2019 to have list of action that we plan to do, and that is in line with the lawsuit that was, our citizens raised in the court. So when the court made the decisions, we decided not to appeal, and in fact, we sent a message that we're going to do it. But before the court made that decisions, we had already made outside court sessions with the groups that brought this lawsuit. We had 2 meetings, and there are 15 issues that we discussed, and we come to agreement on 13 issues that we agreed on it. We will implement it, and we will actually do it. The other 2 issues that we could not come to agreement because that is beyond our jurisdictions. It was the national government authority. Therefore, out of 15 issues, we come to agreement on 13 issues. That's why we're in line with the lawsuit, actually. So we don't see reasons to be, because it was a lawsuit, then let's appeal. No, let's accept it. Let's move forward. Let's make sure that, like Ani said earlier, move from commitment into outcome. So if I may mention here, there was a gubernatorial instructions number 66 in 2019 that consists of quick wins actions to reduce air pollution. And Jakarta is currently developing a grand design of air quality control, and that grand design is done through collaborations with our strategic partners like the Vital Strategies and the World Resource Institute Indonesia, and this is part of our effort to show that this need to go beyond commitment but into outcome. And perhaps you remembers that we also did a collaborations in air quality control with World Resource Institute through the Clean Air Catalyst program. So we are on the same directions, and we do hope it sends a message that not only the people of Jakarta that would like to see the clean air of our city, but the government is also committed to that, and the government is prepared to collaborate with anyone that is going to undertake that same vision. Thank you.
Thank you. Ani, you might want to comment on this program that you're working with the Jakarta government, the Clean Air Catalyst program. What's your assessment of how much can that impact on the quality of air in Jakarta? Go ahead, Ani.
Yeah, very much so. I do want to comment on what Governor said just now. I think it is actually a positive sign that citizens actually brought a suit and it was decided on how governor reacted to it. And that people are interested, engaged, and taking action towards it. So it is, from where I sit, looks like a positive thing that's happened there. And governor is absolutely right. It is where the Jakarta is part of the Clean Air Catalyst. It's a global program, a consortium of 8 organizations working. It's funded by USAID, and WRI Indonesia is working with the governor and his team on this. And there's a very nice question actually in the chat, Dino, that clean, just because it's clear sky doesn't mean it's clean air, which is a very good point, right? I mean, Governor, you know exactly. It's absolutely right. So what can we do? What are we hoping with Governor and his team is actually to help with source attribution. Like, what is the source of the pollution? The best thing you can do, because a lot of cities take action and actually don't solve the problem. Air quality is a mix of many things, including what's happening weather, including things that are happening outside Jakarta, and what things are that happening, to understanding much better with data, with the highest quality data, what is happening, what are the source of pollution, what activities are responsible, and then developing an action plan that is connected with each one of those actions in a systematic way. The last thing I'm going to, so that is what the Cleaner Catalyst tries to do, is to work with cities, work with Jakarta to get the sources, understand much more granular understanding of the sources of pollution, how it's happening, when it's happening. Air, as you know, it's a chemical, right? It's a mix of many things and acts differently, different weathers, and having a much better understanding of it helps to make much more predictable planning for air quality management. It's really management. You don't solve air quality tomorrow. It's managing air quality for better. The other thing I want to say, that's the last point Governor made, you don't solve air quality just by government. You really need a coalition of actors, a multi-stakeholder solution that includes businesses, includes people who are driving cars, people who are running businesses, people who are using cookstoves. All of us together needs to be part of the solution. So I hope, Governor, as you move forward, we are really looking forward to working with you and also supporting you, building a coalition of actors that support change in clean air, because it benefits all of us.
Thank you, Ani. Now, Governor Anies, I have a number that really struck me, that if there are policies that can improve energy efficiency in urban transport system, that can help save as much as $70 trillion on spending on vehicles, fuel, and transport between now and 2050. I mean, that's a staggering number. So can you share what Jakarta is doing on the transportation system, on electric buses, cars, Transjakarta, and so on? Please. Okay, we seem to be losing contact. Let me ask Ani then. Ani,
do you know if I might respond to that? That large number is Governor back now. So how important what you just said about transportation. So if we just produced a study for all cities across the world, and a study for Indonesia about decarbonizing cities. And the reason I'm mentioning this, there are 4 things cities can do with the current technology, without some big technological innovation, that almost gets us to 90% reduction. So what are the 4 things? One is buildings. Building actually consume a lot of energy. Building efficiency is one of the very important, because as you know, in Jakarta, all of Indonesia, air conditioning is and it's growing. Air conditioning is growing in South Asia, in India, in Africa, as people become more affluent. So buildings is actually a very big consumer of energy. And because there are so many buildings, because so many people live in cities. Number 2, very important, is transportation that Dino just mentioned. So transportation is one of the biggest polluters in most places, and both cars, trucks, two-wheelers are less, but two-wheelers are many. So changing transportation that's number 2. Number 3, building materials, actually cement and concrete and steel that goes into it. It doesn't produce pollution right there. It produces pollution when it's manufactured. And the 3rd is waste. So if you take waste and recycling, so if you take these 4 sectors, there are many other sectors in cities, you could, with the current technology, move to 90%. But to get there, you can get to about 40% on its own, but to get to 90%, you need decarbonized energy, because a lot of the things I'm talking about needs to be electrified. So building needs to be electrified, energy. So if cities, and this is where I hope I was going to go to Governor Anies about what's the plan for energy decarbonization, because cities are very dependent on electricity, as you can imagine. And we want them to be more dependent, because we want to convert transportation as fast as possible to electric, because it's possible. The technology today exists to convert buses, to convert cars, of course, convert two-wheelers. You must have seen the explosion in the world. It's literally explosion of electric bicycles, which has made a whole generation of people using bicycles, which we think is a fantastic solutions to expand cities, because most city travel are not that often, not long distance. So, Dino, to answer your question, cities actually have solutions today to have dramatic shift in decarbonization. The question is, how do you do it? Not what to do. It's very clear what needs to be done. And decarbonizing energy becomes a very important part of the solution for cities. So it'll be good if governor comes back to hear from the governor, what is the plan of Jakarta on their discussion with PLN and others, because PLN just signed a deal with our WRI Indonesia help to actually purchase and get decarbonized energy available, renewable energy available. So it will be good to know what the city of Jakarta is doing on that. Back to you, Dino.
Thank you, Ani. The governor, I've been told that the governor is having technical problems, so we'll stay with you for now, Ani. There's a question from David Lee, and this is coming from Monash University, actually. How would a country or province balance between carbon emission and economic activity? For example, coal power approximately powers 60% of energy in Indonesia. A drastic cut in coal will reduce carbon emission, but detrimental to the economy. Ani?
It's a very good question. On my view, and on a collective view of the science, is I think that right now it's not a question of development versus carbon. I think every step we take toward decarbonization and development, my own judgment is development, or as jobs, as you mentioned, and decarbonization is actually one and the same step. So we absolutely have to move away from coal-fired plants, but we have to do it in a way that we actually create jobs for the people, that the transition, that's why all of us are talking about the just transition, is fair and just for people who are involved and whose jobs will be affected. And that's why it's not just taking coal power plant and doing something else. It's actually thinking about who are the people involved, whose jobs it is, how do we train them, what other jobs there are. Across the world, I hope this is clear to everyone, Dino, in your audience. Today, across the world, producing renewable energy, both solar and wind, per dollar, per unit of energy, it is cheaper to produce them than carbon intensive or hydrocarbon based energy, so coal or gas or whatever. So it is cheaper. So it's not the economic case of it. The case is of transition. Actually, in Indonesia, Japan are only two countries in the world where it is not the case, where unit of renewable energy is still more expensive to produce than others. But in all the other world, and then this will change, I think, shortly. So the question here is not the economic case, is the question is of transition. How do we transition from where to are? And this is what requires detailed planning of just transition, of how do we make sure people are not impacted poorly, their job, we understand the jobs, who they are, what training would it be take. And this is the job of transition of the central government to have plan, but also, Dino, and I forget the name you mentioned from Monash University, it is also the job of the rich countries that have agreed in 2009 is actually produce $100 billion of support to countries in global south by 2020 to support with these transitions. These transitions are going to take place. It's going to be expensive in some places, not expensive in other places, but the transitions are going to be hard, right? And so financing it properly, having proper plan is critical. And those rich countries, and this is why the COP next month will be so critical, is to make sure resources are available to support these kind of transition that's needed. I do not think, at least the science doesn't say, that these are choices to be made, that we need to choose between a coal-fired plant and growth. I think the growth of the future is actually decarbonized growth, because if you continue to build coal-fired plant, the cost of that to the society is so humongous. Not just the cost of producing power, the air quality, the carbon that we have to take out of the air in the future. All these will be that much more expensive as we go forward. So we have to do everything possible right now not to add more carbon to the air, because already, as you know, there's too much carbon dioxide in the air, which lives for years, for decades. That doesn't go away. So, Dino, my view is this is not really a dichotomous choice. The way forward is to find a solution for the economy and decarbonization. And those are the solutions we need to pursue.
Okay, thank you. Oh, Anis is back. Sorry.
Yes, there was a thunderbolt exactly next door. So it was a new experience. Yep, I'm back. Sorry, I missed a few things.
We were just talking about energy, Governor. So it's a perfect timing of the thunderbolt.
Sure, guys. You mentioned earlier about how can we save, as much as 70 trillion spending on vehicles and, but, please, is that the issues or you have already moved on?
Yes, I wanted to know what is your plan for electrifying Indonesia's, Jakarta's transportation sector, because that's going to be a big part of the emission reduction here.
Yeah, well, one, Jakarta is also, of course, known for highly congested city, and transportation is one of the main contributor to greenhouse gas emissions and air pollutions. So these conditions is about to change. As you can see, we have been undertaking tremendous actions to improve our public transport. So we are changing from highly congested city, hopefully into a sustainable mobility city that gives priority, its highest priority, to one, pedestrian and cyclists. And in fact, this is my directions to all the team in the office and the city of Jakarta, that facility that need to be developed has priority. Priority number one is for pedestrian. Number two is for emission-free vehicles. Number three is for public transport. And number four is for private vehicle. It used to be the other way around, that infrastructure developed is for private vehicles, and last is for pedestrian. We are now reversing it. So first is for pedestrian. So after this, hard work in the past few years, we have seen some result that, if I may, I'd like to share here. One, on public transport coverage. From 2015, that was only 24%. And by 2019, it was 83%. So it jumped more than threefold. And then annual riderships within the period of 2017 to 2019, it increased by 82%. And then sidewalks. We have developed 364 kilometers of sidewalks, 96 kilometers of dedicated bike lanes. And then we also set up bike sharing spots, and we have no less than 52 in the center of our cities. And on top of that, we are undertaking a transitions to electric bus, and we implemented low emission zones. And if I may also add to that, the number of cyclists in Jakarta has increased tenfold in the past year and a half. So these numbers have indicated that, yes, we are now undergoing a transformations, and it is not only the side of government, as Ani mentioned earlier. There is no way that this is all done only by government. All the numbers that I have presented earlier, this shown that it was done by everybody. So when we are talking about number of cyclists in Jakarta that increased tenfold, that's not employee of government. Those are the people of Jakarta. Those are the Jakartans that have decided to use bicycles. And look at the sidewalks. People that walks now have increased significantly. So and then we're talking about daily ridership of public transport. It used to be around 350,000 daily ridership. Just before the pandemic started, it reached 1 million. So threefolds in 3 years, numbers of daily riderships of public transport. If our fleet tripled, it simply shows that we have the fiscal capacity to enlarge our public transport fleet. But if the number of daily ridership tripled, it means the behavior of our citizens in our city have shifted from private vehicles to public transport. So those are some of the examples of how we address the issues.
Okay, thank you. There's a question from Putu, and this question I think I would like Ani and Governor Anis to answer. How do you produce green jobs in cities? Because it is said that green jobs are the wave of the future. Yeah. So what is the best way to produce green jobs in cities? Maybe Ani first, then Governor, if you want to chime in. Ani? Yeah.
I think Governor already answered that. All the things Governor said needs to be done actually creates jobs, every one of those things. So Governor, I can't thank you enough for prioritizing walking first. I think that is most underestimated number in the most global South cities. People think everyone goes to everywhere in cars. Every evidence, everywhere we have counted numbers, you will be stunned how many people in the world, and I'm talking about global South here, go to work, about 25% of the people. So, and how much money of public resources actually goes to fixing or making better sidewalks. I don't know the number in Jakarta. In other countries, it's like 1%, 2%. So there's no correlation between the people and the money. So I was so happy to hear that you prioritize walking, biking to get, because these people who are walking to work are not rich people. These are people who are the poorer people in the world that is going. So this is very good, very equitable. I'm very happy to see here that you're prioritizing public transport. You've done amazing progress. I hope more people move around. You know, the science of cities, actually big cities like Jakarta or dense cities like Jakarta, the cars really don't fit in. There is no way to fit in cars in a sustainable way in the future, simply because even if you had electric cars, simply because a car takes 25 square meters of space, there's not enough road space to actually have all these cars. So if you take a car out of road, you actually get the bus moving faster. A bus normally has 50 to 80 people, depending on how crowded it is. So more people and more efficiently use the road space. So using cars, the next time you're in a car, think about it. And all of you most probably will be in a car sometime very soon. It's the most undemocratic way to use a city. So when you're using a car, you're taking away space from a public transport, from other things. So cars, I'm not talking about whether it's electric or not. Soon, most will be electric, will be good. It's still not the best way to move around. So best way to move around, what Anis is saying, is actually walking, biking, public transport, shared cars maybe, but less so, but public transport. So I just want to underline, Dino, your question, jobs, each of those things, you know, people think jobs, you know, I hate this phrase, shovel-ready projects. Have you heard this word? All of you, shovel-ready projects. So when we have recovery discussion after COVID, everyone said we need shovel-ready projects, which means projects we already have in PayU, in public works, that is there, not new innovative things. So most cities end up, I don't know, Pani, if you did this, forgive me for saying that, is go and repave roads, which is the easiest thing to do because you really don't have to do any planning, you can spend a lot of money. We did a study, just how many jobs is created by repaving roads compared to how many jobs are creating, say, charging infrastructure, which you need for electric cars. Turns out the charging infrastructure actually per dollar creates more jobs than conventionally we thought repaving roads creates more jobs. And I'm happy to share this report. So Dino, to answer your question, green jobs are these simple jobs that actually help us create the infrastructure for future, for walking, for biking, for electrifying cars, electrifying buses, for charging them, to make bus priority lanes, to make better subway systems. All these things, these are not rocket science. Every one of these solutions provide a more greener outcome. So the reason I'm saying this, I think we need to demystify green job is not some kind of high-tech job, someone sitting in some air-conditioned room and, you know, creating a new computer. Green jobs are these things that we're just talking about that just creates the infrastructure we need for a more successful city of future.
And Ani, if I may jump, Dino, what Ani mentions here, this is exactly what we need for governors, mayors across the globe. We know that we have to move forward into green cities, build public transports. However, we need the data to support that visions. World Resource Institute has been very helpful in providing that, and more materials like this will help us to have evidence-based policies in this regard, and it will also help us to convince that this is a paradigmatic transformations that all of us needs to do. But having the data, having those figures is very critical. So Ani, thank you very much for bringing that.
But Bob, we are eager to help with that, and we have actually all these numbers I said about jobs on different sectors in cities. We just finished a study, and maybe Dino can help me. I absolutely want to make sure you or your team members have it, or I don't know, Koni's in this call. Koni can help us make sure you have it.
Okay. Thank you. Panis, like 30% of all the questions are about sinking Jakarta, right? So what is going to happen and what are we going to do about it? Should we start on moving to Puncak, or should we stay put? Go ahead, Panis.
You presided the sessions. I follow your directions, But I think it's something that we need to respond. Jakarta and many northern coastal area of Java is experiencing the issue of rock or flood because of the rise in sea level. So let me talk about Jakarta. One, there are three reasons why we have the issue of sinking. One is the topography itself. Jakarta is a lowland surrounded by highland in the south, and we have always been area of waters. That's why names in Jakarta marks water. For example, Rawamangun, Rawa Bebek, Rawa Belong, Rawa Buaya, which means watery area. So one is the topography that has been there for millions of years. Number two is land subsidence. In the past, we experienced land subsidence because there is not enough distributions of clean water, drinking water to the populations, so that therefore large number of our citizens were having well and extracted water from their land, and that's created land subsidence. However, these issues has been tackled. So if you look at the map of area that experiencing land subsidence in 2007 up to 2020, we have seen significant reductions. So we used to have more than 20 area in Jakarta that experience land subsidence more than 10 centimeters per year. Now we have it around 5. So 5, and we do hope that the next few years that number will be 0. And if that is 0, that means we have tackled issue number 2, which is land subsidence. So how do we do it? Making sure that we distributed clean water, drinking water to our population, especially in the slum area. And that's what we have been doing. Piping takes time. So the way we did it is we create a water tank, and then we ship water through mobile vehicles so that their needs is fulfilled. So that's issue number 2. Number 3 is the rise of sea level. This is global warming issue. So this is an issue that we need to address by everyone across the globe. So the reason why Jakarta is experiencing the phenomenon of sinking is 3 issues. One is the topography. Number 2 is land subsidence. We have tackled that. We are on the right directions. Very soon, we hope we will have 0 land subsidence area. Number 3 is with regard to the rise of sea level. And by the way, how do we tackle this? We built wall in the coastal area. It stretches 33 kilometers across Jakarta. And with that wall, we do hope it can prevent the sea water from coming into the area. So that's how we handle it. And we're positive, we're optimistic that Jakarta will be safe. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. You just effectively answered 30 questions in the chat group. So thank you very much. By the way, so we get 2 questions left. Ani, I want to ask you a global question. Maybe all of us would benefit from hearing this also. You know, everybody was talking about the Great Reset last year, right? COVID-19, so let's do a great reset, transform everything, and decarbonize, and so on and so on. So now is about 2 years on from the call for global reset. What is your take? Is it happening, or is only 50% happening, or it's not happening at all? You know, what's the scorecard on this global reset that sounds so good last year? And I know people are still pushing it, yeah. But how much mileage has it produced? And Pa Governor Anis, after this, as a closing statement, I would like for you to answer if the capital of Indonesia is moved to Kalimantan, what will happen to Jakarta? You know, what kind of city will Jakarta be? Yeah. But Pa Ani, please, Great Reset. What's the scorecard on that?
I can't wait to hear if Governor Anis' answer to your question about Kalimantan and capital. But reset, the answer is the glass is half full. That is the honest answer. So let me just explain. So one thing, you're absolutely right. 2 years back, this was seen as a moment of change. And the good news is I think governments across the world recognize what an incredible phenomenon COVID has been, not just for the disease, for job, what has happened to the economy, who got countries like India lost 10 million plus jobs in just one go. The informal workers, what happened to them, of mobility, what happened. So I think the fun part of it, the recognition of a kind of a momentary complete shift of our usual assumption. Usual assumption also cities, governance. Like what would cities be? Well, Governor mentioned his opening statement about work and the future of work. So absolutely, it's true that this has caused people to rethink policies across the world, everywhere. Number 2, countries across the world, mostly the richest countries in the world, have allocated unprecedented amount of resources for recovery. Right now, our calculations show about $15 trillion have been allocated to recover from COVID. I want to repeat the number, $15 trillion. Nowhere in the history, any that so much resources have been put together to recover, because people absolutely saw this as an existential problem of economies, what was happening, and again, I repeat, this is the most of the richer countries. So yes, countries actually stepped up all the things they could do to recover or actually make sure economies recover. The second question, did this money get spent in the best way possible? The answer is we don't know yet because the money is just starting to be spent. However, our analysis show the pledging the governments have done, less than 50% of this is towards greening outcome, meaning traditional hydrocarbon-based outcomes versus greening. So that has not been the most encouraging. How the money has been allocated for the reasons I was mentioning before. A lot of people because a lot of the money is actually allocated for, job protection, social safety nets. You can't make them green or not. Those are things you have to do. But infrastructure investment, a lot of money went into coal kinds of related things. That has not been super positive. Why is this important? Because when you talk about $15 trillion, there are not many $15 trillion in the system. So if this $15 trillion is not used in the most transformative way, and use it not only for COVID recovery, but also to create job that's greener, to make the economy greener, the opportunities to do these actually gets reduced because climate crisis is here. It's not something in the future. So the answer to your question, I think it was a clear recognition of the moment of what was happening, what's happening to the economy. I thought for the first time in the world, every country in the world has the same problem, which is how to create jobs. So there were no difference between New York or Jakarta. Everyone was worrying about the same thing. There was a solidarity for that. The response has been very big in some parts, not evenly distributed, but the response has been not being completely towards taking this moment to change the economy, use investment for change. It's happening a lot. United States, you see, for example, the whole recovery investment is towards not only greening, but more equitable outcome. Very positive to see. EU is very positive to see. Countries like Denmark have done incredible job. Countries like Colombia. So there are spots of real good outcomes that we see. So my judgment is it is half full. The glass is half full.
Thank you. Governor Anies, what happens when or if the capital city moves to Kalimantan? What will happen to Jakarta? What kind of city will it be? And will the population move to the new capital city? I'm sure many of them will stay because they have their homes here. But what do you see will happen when the capital city moves?
I think that this is two different issues. One is about climate change and environmental problems that Jakarta is facing and the transformation that Jakarta is undertaking. And then issue number two is about the status of the city as a capital city or not as capital city. So even if the capital city is relocated to Kalimantan, that doesn't relocate the problem. Environmental problem is not being relocated to Kalimantan. The air pollution is not being relocated to Kalimantan. It's the status of the capital city that is being relocated. We still have to deal with all those issues. So I think Jakarta will continue to undertake these transformations. And we're very grateful that our young populations in the cities pay serious attention on environmental issues. And I think this will also move private sectors, third sectors to undertake the same directions on transforming the city into a greener city. And then with regard to the status of Jakarta as capital city, let me give you an illustration with regard to transport, for example. We have seen Jakarta as heavily congested city. So the question is, how big is government activity contributed to traffic congestion? And the answer is no more than 7%. So government activity contributed no more than 7% of Jakarta's traffic. So Jakarta traffic is majority for number one is household activities. Number two is business. So even if the national government decided to relocate the capital to Kalimantan, we will continue to develop public transport because we will have to address one about traffic congestions. Two is about clean air in our city. So the issue of relocations of our capital city is something that national government will decide. However, transforming the city into a greener city, enlarging the coverage of public transport and ensuring integrations of public transport is our agenda. We will continue to undertake this agenda. And I do believe that the public is also experiencing a new, I would say, a new phenomenon that is, in using Ani's term, is more democratic. I always said to our team, and whenever we are launching our public transport effort, I always remind everyone that public transport is not only as a means of transporting individuals or public from one place to another, but it is a means of exposing everyone to the spirit of equality. In the public transport, there is no business class, there is no economic class. If you're the governor, you're the president, you're the minister, you take public transport, you stand on the same place, you sit on the same area. A sense of equality is there. Number two is feeling of togetherness. When you are in the public transport, be a CEO or be an office boy, you will stand next to each other. It's a place where you interact. And if you're using private vehicles, the office boy is riding motorcycles, the CEOs, the GMs were taking four-wheelers and sometimes luxurious four-wheelers. So what happened is we have, without us realizing, we segregated our population. So the presence of public transport is beyond transportations. It is about transforming the society. It is about uniting the society. It is creating the feeling of equality. And as Ani mentioned earlier, it is a democratic way to use infrastructure. So the direction Jakarta is now undertaking, it is not only about hard infrastructure, it is about transforming the society, and we will continue doing that with or without the status of Jakarta as capital city, because the issue is still there with us. And I'm positive that the people of Jakarta has been experiencing new exposure to this, and I do hope this will continue, and one day we look back and be grateful. We're grateful that we addressed this issue by, for example, expansions of public transport, integration of public transport, and that the city is friendly and green, and that everyone look back and say, okay, we're happy, we're part of it. Thank you.
Thank you. This has been such a fascinating discussion. I really hate to end this, but I've been told that we have to close by 8:30. I want to thank Pa Ani Dasgupta from World Resource Institute for joining us. By the way, I forgot to tell everybody that World Resource Institute is the best think tank in the world on sustainable development. I'm not saying this rhetorically, but there is actually a ranking of think tanks, and World Resource Institute consistently in the last few years always getting number 1 or number 2. Yeah, so congratulations, and thank you for working with the Governor Anies Baswedan, the government of Jakarta, to promote the green growth. And Governor Anies, I cannot be more proud of you. I don't know if you remember, 20 years ago, I was a young diplomat, and I went to Chicago to explain about some visa issues that were problematic.
Yes, indeed.
I remember there was this young guy was asking me very critical questions, but very strong questions. I asked, "Who's that?" And that's a student named Anis. And I said he's gonna be a leader one day, and I was right. Yeah. So thank you for your leadership.
Well, thank you, for always being there on the strategic issues. And also you mentioned about the World Resource Institute. Hani, when I studied at University of Maryland, I used to visit your office very often because I took environmental issues at that time, and always search for resources out there. And your team has always been very supportive to us students. And you were in Washington. I was studying. We never imagined that our path cross again, and that 20 years later, we talk about issues of interest that all of us is focusing. So I'm very happy with this session and look forward for further engagement.
Absolutely, Governor. Dino, first of all, thank you for this event. And it's a fantastic conversation. It's so nice to see everyone. I wish we could go through this fantastic discussion that's happening in the chat. I've been just looking at it. It's incredible questions. But Governor, it's wonderful to meet you. I hope we do many more things with you. You can count on our support. just want more leaders like you to seek transformational change. So count on us for support, and count on our office in Jakarta. And Dino, thank you very much for including me. I really, really enjoyed being part of it.
Indeed, thank you, Dino, for organizing all of this. Truly appreciate.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. And keep in mind, this is the first of Climate Heroes program. Every month, we're going to present climate heroes from Indonesia and United States, pair them up together and update all of you and inspire all of you. Thank you so much, Governor Anies and Pa Ani, and everybody. See you 1 month from now in the next Climate Heroes series program. Thank you.
Thank you, Padino, and thank you, everybody. For all of our audience today, thank you for staying with us. We'll be distributing an attendance form for those of you who would like to retrieve your e-certificate. So make sure you fill that form before you leave today. Before everybody leaves also, I would like to encourage each one of you to take a climate action by signing our petition. It's at change.org/daruratiklim. Tandatangani petisinya di change.org/daruratiklim. This is a petition to ask Indonesia to commit to net zero emissions by 2050, preceded by halving the emissions by 2030. So again, please sign our petition, and this way you can support your climate action. And then stay tuned for future dialogues of climate heroes. We'll be bringing in climate heroes from the US and Indonesia as inspirational as today's climate heroes. For that, you can follow our socials at FPC Indo, Twitter FPC Indo, and website fpciclimate.org. Again, thank you on behalf of the foreign policy community of Indonesia for tuning in and staying throughout the session. We'll see you at next month's Climate Heroes Dialogue. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you, Esther. Yeah, great job. Thank you, everybody.